In this episode of the Bannerlord Perks Guide, we will look at the Scouting Skill Perks. By the end of this video, you will have a complete understanding of what each one does and which to pick based on your specific needs. I put timestamps in the description for your convenience, and without further ado, let's get started. Day Traveler. We start this guide with a pair of movement speed perks, but don't worry, nearly all of them work. We can see from testing, without the perk there is no bonus to movement speed or vision distance, and with the perk we get a 0.1 movement speed increase and 1.35 view distance bonus. These work during the daytime only. One thing to note, all movement speed perks scale with our base movement speed, so as we add more troops to the party or army, the bonus will decrease. Night Runner. This perk gives 5% for movement speed and 30% for sight range, but only for the nighttime. We can see from testing a 0.25 movement speed increase and 2.25 sight range bonus with the perk. I also tested to see exactly when the nighttime begins and ends, which seems to be from 12 midnight to about 4 AM, so only a 4-hour window. The pick here is pretty easy as I generally take Day Traveler. Night Runner gives a larger bonus, but is activated for much less time. We can see Night Runner gives a 2.5 times more movement speed and 3 times more sight range bonus, but the daytime perk is active for 4 times longer, which means you get more value from the Day Traveler perk. Pathfinder. The first part of the perk increases movement speed when on the steppes and plains. We can see from testing a 0.1 movement speed increase when in the proper parts of the map. It's easier to define where the bonus turns off since the vast majority of the map is technically steppe or plains. It doesn't work in forests or the desert. The secondary perk gives a 50% chance to increase relations with notables in the town. Notables are defined as merchants, gang leaders, and artisans, as opposed to the clan members or owners of the town. Water Diviner. The first part of this perk works similar to the previous, but it gives a 10% sight range bonus instead of movement speed. We can see a 1.5 increase to view distance at level 50 scouting. This bonus scales upward with higher levels of scouting, and the secondary perk gives a relationship boost with notables in a village. If it doesn't proc, simply exit the village and enter it again several times until it does. The pick here is Pathfinder most of the time, as movement speed is much more useful than sight range bonus. The secondary perk for Water Diviner is a bit more useful as villages are better for recruiting than towns, and raising relationship with nobles helps us recruit more troops, but I don't think it overpowers the usefulness of movement speed. Desert Born. Everyone except for Aserai will get a movement speed penalty for being in the desert, and this perk helps reduce that. We can see from testing a 0.5 movement speed hit for being in the desert, but get back 0.25 with the perk, effectively cutting the penalty in half. I also tested what happens when you take Aserai as your culture, and it still provides the 0.25 movement speed bonus, making it a significant speed buff in that part of the map for Aserai culture. The Governor perk increases taxes by 2.5%, which is quite low. Forest Kin. When moving through forests, you will normally get a speed penalty, and this perk helps to reduce that. We can see from testing the highest speed penalty is 1.5 while being in a forest, and will scale downward depending on how many troops you have. If we take the perk, it will reduce this penalty by half. A quick note, you need at least 75% of your troops to be on foot. If you're using a Botanian culture character, the forest movement speed bonus will still work, but this perk actually cuts the bonus by half as well. Usually they add a line item for the perk, but in this case, they reduce the penalty directly, which is where the culture bonus comes from. Tailworld's order of operations, I guess. The Governor perk increases taxes from villages by 10%, which can be decent. For the main perk, I prefer Forest Kin as it is much greater effect in general. There are significantly more forests around the map than deserts, and the perk has a greater impact when comparing the two. At most, Desert Born will add 0.25 and Forest Kin 0.75, or 3 times more. For the Governor perk, the pick will depend on what fief you own. Some towns and castles have only 1 or 2 villages attached to them, and some towns have up to 4. In the case where a fief has 3 or 4 attached villages, then Forest Kin will see a greater increase because 10% for 3 or 4 villages is a large amount. For most towns with 1 or 2 attached villages, Desert Born will be the pick. Forced March. Morale in Bannerlord can give a speed bonus on its own, but this perk increases that bonus even more. We see no bonus when below 75 morale, a 0.07 speed bonus when above 75 morale, but no perk, and 0.12 speed perk bonus with the perk activated. The secondary perk is tagged Party Leader and gives 2 XP per day per troop when morale is above 75. Unburdened. If we go over our inventory capacity, we will lose speed due to being overburdened. This perk reduces the speed penalty by 20%. We can see from testing it doesn't actually reduce the penalty, but adds back in a 20% speed increase to effectively cancel some of the penalty. The secondary perk gives all troops a 2 XP per day bonus when moving while being overburdened. I rarely come across situations where being overburdened is a real issue. It's for this reason that Forced March is the pick. Late game, it's very easy to maintain high morale and activating both movement speed perks and the XP perk. Ranger. I had a really tough time with this one as testing spotting distance and track distance is very hard to do. Spotting tracks is RNG based, so getting tracks to appear at the max distance would take hundreds of data points, and even then you never really know if it's the max or if RNG is just playing with you. The first part of the perk increases the distance of spotting by 20%, and the second part increases the chance of spotting by 10%. Tracker. The first part of this perk increases the duration that the track will stay active by 20%. We can see from testing most tracks will last around 20 hours without the perk and up to 26 before disappearing with the perk. The secondary perk is supposed to increase movement speed when following a hostile party, but I could not get it to activate. If you've gotten this perk to work in the past, please let me know how to do it in the comment section. Based on the testing, the pick is Ranger. Having increased range and detection chance is great when it comes to leveling up scouting in the first place, since spotting tracks is the primary way to level the skill. Mounted Scouts. If we have more than 50% cavalry in our party, then this perk will add a 10% bonus to the sight range. We see from testing a 2.1 sight increase, the same as Water Diviner, which is also 10%. The secondary perk adds +5 to our party size, which is great to have. Patrols. This perk gives bonuses when fighting against bandits. The first part gives +5 morale, which we can see from testing made no difference for a group of 17 watchmen. More than half ran away when the main character went down for both scenarios. The secondary perk gives a 10% bonus to simulated battles. Without the perk, we managed to eliminate 12 and 4 troops each time, and 10 both times with the perk. I recall from testing previously for Tactics Guide that saving and running auto-resolve several times caused very bizarre results, so take these with a grain of salt. The pick here is a tough one since they are both not very good. The problem I have with the patrols is that it only works when fighting against bandits, which isn't all that useful. The auto-resolve boost can help when farming if you don't feel like fighting in person. The problem with mounted scouts is that you need at least 50% cavalry in your party to work, which may not be feasible for most people. If you don't use cavalry that much, then pick patrols. If you do use cavalry, then take mounted scouts. Beast Whisperer. I used to think this perk was trash, but thanks to several comments from the Writing Perks guide, I've changed my mind. I started by traveling in Khazate lands to see how effective it was, but it was very slow going. Instead, I stayed still on the steppes and turned the speed up to plaid. This is the results of a little over a year of waiting. We can see several of the cheap horses we can buy, but looking near the bottom we see several that you cannot buy. We even picked up a Pureblood, which is the best mount in the game. S tier perk right here. The secondary perk gives 10% more carry capacity for pack animals. In this test, we went from 6,000 inventory capacity to 6,600. Foragers. Let's cut to the point here. This perk reduces food consumption by 10% while moving through steppes and forests. This also reduces Steward XP gain for the Quartermaster, so I don't recommend taking it at any point. The secondary perk reduces the time it takes to clear the disorganized state by 15%. Disorganized state lasts only a couple hours, so this perk is quite weak. The pick is Beast Whisperer 100% of the time. Please don't take Forager unless they fix the Steward XP. Getting rare mounts is S tier. One thing to note, it seems like the chance to get the horse is once per day, and I think it's when you pay your daily wages, so make sure you are not in a forest when wages are paid. Otherwise, you waste the 5% chance for that day. You don't have to be moving for this to work, so you can leave your party to sit in most places on the map if you want. Rumour Network. The first part of this perk is tagged Party Leader and reduces trade penalty within cities of your faction by 5%. From the testing, we start with Chad from Botania and check the Botanian towns. We can see no difference in pricing until we join Botania as a mercenary or vassal. Culture doesn't matter, but Kingdom does. The secondary perk increases the detection range of hideouts by 30%. We can see from the testing it's a significant difference. Village Network. This is similar to the previous one, but gives 10% for villages. Again, we see the pre-perk price, then no price change after the perk, and finally a price change only when we join the kingdom. I tested again with the Empire to make sure culture made no difference, which it didn't. The secondary perk is for the governor and increases villager party size by 10%. Villager party size helps deter attacks from local bandits, which can keep your fief producing cash. The pick here isn't so simple. If you do a lot of trading from towns or like to hunt down hideouts, then Rumour rumor network is good. Usually in the mid to late game, hideouts are more of an annoyance than something you really want to be searching out. If you do a lot of trading with villages, then village network is a good pick. For governors, village network is the only option. Keen sight. If you watch the writing perks guide, you'll know this perk made an appearance already. It's mostly useful if you pair it with the 225 writing perk that reduces prisoner escape chance. Otherwise, it's mostly a waste. Vantage point. This perk is interesting as it increases sight range by 25%, which is huge. The only caveat is that we must be stationary for 1 hour for the bonus to begin. In the test, we see a 6.38 increase to sight range. The secondary perk increases the prisoner limit by a flat +10. This could be helpful if your party size is small, since prisoner limit scales with the troops in your party. The pick here is easy. If you can get writing to 225 as well as this one, and are going solo or the leader of a kingdom, then keen sight is the pick. If you're a vassal, then the leader will eventually sue for peace and all those prisoners you're collecting will be released, which is a huge waste. Otherwise, Vantage Point is the pick. Rear Guard. This perk increases the healing rate of wounded troops in our party while we are in an army. In testing, it takes 74 hours to heal 54 troops back to full health without the perk, and only 68 hours with the perk. The secondary perk increases the efficiency of auto-resolve battles from siege camp defenses. In testing, we caused 530 casualties without the perk, and 563 with the perk, which is a decent increase. Vanguard. More auto-resolve perks. Fantastic. This one gives a 5% increase to damage dealt by our troops. Without the perk, we can see in testing 51 and 47 casualties taken, but only 46 with the perk. The numbers are so thin here that they are within the margin of error from randomness, so it's hard to say if it actually works or not. The Governor perk is currently not working according to BannerlordPerks.com. The pick here is rearguard most of the time, as the extra healing is quite useful. If you plan on doing a simulated battle playthrough, then Vanguard can be considered, although 5% is pretty small. Uncanny insight. At last, we reached the final perk. One thing to note here, this is the only perk in the entire skill tree that is tagged as personal. This means we cannot use this perk with a companion. It must be our main character for it to work. This increases movement speed by 0.1% per level above 200. In testing, we see a bonus movement speed of 0.37 at level 275 with no troops, 0.65 at 330 with no troops, 0.55 at 330 with 100 troops, and it scales down to 0.39 at 500 troops. With cavalry only, we get 0.45 at level 330 with 300 cavalry and 0.39 with 500 troops. This perk is really good and worth getting up to 330 if possible. It does scale depending on how many troops we have, but it still is a big increase even with 500 troops. We're nearing the end of the video, which means it's time for the bonus, the Rapid Reinforcement System. Using the campaign movement speed perks from scouting, as well as a couple from other skills, we can achieve a blazing fast movement speed that will allow us to defend our fiefs against incredible odds. We start with the 2 perks from writing, which we only need level 100 for both. Next, we take level 200 athletic perk strong. Then we finish off with all of the good perks in the scouting tree, particularly the final perk at level 330. Traveling solo, you can see our movement speed is 8.38, which is incredibly fast. It's so fast we can even start the conga line with the step bandits.
But Strat, why would you want to move this fast if you have to be solo to do it?
If you have fiefs on the border of the conflict zone or are trying to start your own kingdom, then you'll know exactly why. The AI loves to constantly raid, start sieges, and generally be as annoying as possible to score emotional victories over us. However, if we can remain mobile and respond to each threat quickly, then we can quickly diminish the enemy troops count, capture nobles, and gain a tremendous amount of XP doing it. We place a couple hundred of our best archers in each garrison, as well as some throwaway units, and wait for the enemy to come. Our first customer, a solo party of less than 100 troops. This group is close to the castle we are in, so we pull enough troops from the garrison to help us defend the village, then place them back once we're done. Now they raid another village to the south, so we race to the nearest castle, pull troops, and defeat them once more. Even with troops, our movement speed is nearly double the enemy, so there's no escape for them. A huge army decides to siege the castle we are in, which will save us the trip. Had they sieged a different castle, we would only need to pick 50 or so of the tier 1 trash units and quickly travel to that castle, sacrifice these units to get in, and then man the defense ourselves personally. Our fast movement speed ensures we can be where we need to be before it's too late. We are facing an army nearly triple the size of our own, but because we have good archers, we will still win the fight. Now the enemy kingdom is severely diminished since they lost 1,400 troops, which will allow us to go on the offensive now. If you want to help me out, don't forget to stab that like button before you leave. If you want to see more videos and guides just like this, consider subscribing. Let me know in the comment section below what topic you would like to see covered on the channel. Up next, we will be looking at all of the tactics perks. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.